So I thought this could be an interesting idea for a video. It's something that we've all been talking about, and there still is a good chunk of people talking about it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers themselves still have not decided who they should draft first overall between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. Now, right when the trade happened, C.J. Stroud was what people assumed would be the case. So again, there was some stuff of like, you saw Frank Reich was apparently he was a fan of, C.J. Stroud. He said positive things, but that doesn't really mean anything. He might be a fan of both of them. In fact, most people are a fan of both of them, so it wouldn't be that crazy for him to say that. But still, that definitely got some eyebrows raised. C.J. Stroud was kind of the consensus guy people thought was going first overall. However, since then, people have started to slowly shift the other way. In fact, people have turned on Stroud a little bit. People still definitely like Stroud a lot as a prospect, but he is now no longer the consensus number 1 overall pick. He's the consensus number 2 overall pick, and Young is the consensus number 1 overall pick. Personally, for me, I finally said I decided to give C.J. Stroud my number 1 pick in my top 10 quarterback rankings list. Definitely went back and forth a lot on that list, but the reason why I decided to give Stroud the nod instead of Young, even though, again, it took me a long time. I think it's very close between the two of them. My thought is, and I think that's part of what makes this conversation so interesting, is I felt like Stroud had a bit of a higher ceiling than Bryce Young did. I think Bryce Young still has a very high ceiling. Again, you don't even have to have insane athletic talents to be an elite quarterback, right? Like Drew Brees definitely didn't have elite athletic talents, but it obviously helps. And I think that for me, I think Stroud is the better athlete when he decides to, right? When he decides to run, his upside to me is better. I think he can throw off balance very well. And I think that he is someone who, in a perfect scenario, I would rather have than Bryce Young. However, we do not know if it's going to be a perfect scenario. All we know is what they are right now, and there's no denying that Bryce Young has been far more consistent over his college career. Bryce Young has been far more consistent than Stroud has, and that's where things get a lot more interesting. Do you take the guy who maybe hasn't, Bryce Young has never played a game like C.J. Stroud did against Georgia, right? But C.J. Stroud has also only played one game like he did against Georgia, right? That's the only time he's ever done that. So, do you take the guy who has consistently shown more, but not necessarily shown higher highs? To be very clear, he has certainly shown high highs in his own right. Again, there's plenty of stuff to like about Bryce Young, and I certainly don't want to make it seem like he could not be an elite player. I think that I see some Joe Burrow-esque tendencies for him, but, one thing that has to be mentioned that I'm sure NFL teams will bring up is Bryce Young's size, which, size is something that tends to get overblown by NFL teams. So a lot of us kind of don't even pay much attention to it. Oh, okay, you're talking about size, whatever, not interested because you're probably overreacting to something small. Well, in this case, that something small is, in fact, Bryce Young, as, he's not just small. We're talking about, barely any quarterbacks have been able to succeed with his size, and even the quarterbacks that have succeeded at his height usually have a bit more weight on them than Bryce Young does. And even maybe an exception like Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, those guys both move very well. Young moves well as well, but he also takes a lot of hits, and there's definitely a concern of, is it possible that Young's career could get derailed really through no fault of his own, just not being, big enough, and when he takes a bad hit, listen, it's a true thing that what tends to equate to injuries more than size is play style. Size is something that often gets equated to that, but play style is the number 1 predictor of injuries. That is absolutely very true. The issue with Bryce Young is his play style also, I feel like, will equate to some injuries. He takes some big hits, and there's also still no denying that, listen, when you're, 190 pounds and you get thrown to the turf, you're just going to get thrown harder than when you're 250 pounds. That's just simple math right there. A 300-pound guy trying to throw you to the ground, it's going to be easier for them if you're not as tall. That's just, or not as big, excuse me. That's just, how that works. So there's definitely that. At the same time, though, there's issues of C.J. Stroud's game as well. People have brought up the, under pressure stuff, and I don't disagree. I think that he, when he gets pressure up the middle, his footwork can get lazy, quite frankly. And to be honest, it's a scary thing when I'm going to compare you to this guy, but it's very Drew Lock-esque at times, the way that he will throw the football when he's getting pressured up the middle. Now, I think throwing side to side, he's great. I think that that's really good, and he has shown that he can be good under pressure. Again, that Georgia game was a prime example. We just don't see it too often, and there's just no denying that playing for Ohio State, you're going to have a bit of a learning curve. I think Bryce Young is going to have the better rookie year than C.J. Stroud. I really do, just simply because, listen, C.J. Stroud, very simple time for him, right? Plays for Ohio State where basically, all day in the pocket. There's some plays where he's getting like 5-6 seconds without even having to move. He's just getting that, which just in the NFL, he's gonna be in for a rude awakening, I think, when he sees some of this stuff, transpire. I think that a lot of his tape is really the simple stuff. A lot of his tape is really just, hey, first read wide open, he throws it to the first read, which you can't hold against him, right? I mean, that's what he's supposed to do. He's being a part of the offense, which is good, but it doesn't tell us anything, right? Because in the NFL, those plays just very rarely happen. Even in the best scenarios, it's nowhere near what C.J. Stroud had at Ohio State. So that's just kind of the issue and one thing that I would be concerned about it. So again, people have talked a lot about Bryce Young and his ability to, his escapability, and it's very good. It is. It really is. I think Stroud's good at it too, though. I do think so. I think that when Stroud, uses his legs to avoid sacks, I think that will work in the NFL level. Now, again, when he tries to throw while getting pressured, that's where some issues can arise. But I think he can fix it. I think with his footwork, he can fix it. The question is just, will it happen? But as a whole, I think a little bit of it is who you select between C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. I think that tells you a little bit of what your mentality is when you're attacking the quarterback position and trying to draft someone at the quarterback position. I think if you're looking for someone who you just feel like has the highest likelihood of being like a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, I think Bryce Young makes sense. To me, though, you do have to kind of take a step back and say, well, what's the goal here? The goal for me is either get a good quarterback that you're paying nothing or get a great quarterback. Those are kind of the two ways you realistically get into the Super Bowl and win it, right? There's exceptions, of course, but that's the main two ways, in my opinion. So because of that, I think Bryce Young will give you that rookie contract entirely that you can build around him. I think Stroud probably can too, and I think Stroud has the higher likelihood of becoming that elite quarterback, that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes style, Joe Burrow, those caliber players that pretty much give you a chance every year to win a Super Bowl, or at least you can have a shot at winning a Super Bowl when you have those players, whereas, if you don't, that's where things get a little bit, it gets a lot harder to win a Super Bowl that way. Not impossible, but a lot harder. So that's kind of my mindset and why I have Stroud higher. But like I said, Bryce Young's a great prospect, and if you drafted him first overall, like if the Panthers draft him first overall, even though I say I would rather take Stroud, I'm still going to defend him and say, hey, what do I know? I'm just a YouTuber. I think it makes a lot of sense to just get one of those two guys. I think it would be insane to draft anyone other than one of those two guys with the first two picks. But that's how I view it. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.